Hello, BookTube. I'm here to talk about the next novel in the Rougon-Macquart series by Emile Zola, a series of 20 novels that sort of charter the uh, period of the Second Empire from 1852, late 1851 to basically, I think it ends with this end of the Second Empire, 1872, with the siege of Paris. Now, this is the third book. This was written in 1872, or published in 1872. It's the second book written, but third chronologically. And the chronology that I'm using is Zola's chronology, the order that he suggests that should be written in, or read in. And it's what I'll do is I'll give sort of a brief background, what is happening around this the novel, like historically. uh, in 1848 there was another sort of revolution, and it's the time where uh, Victor Hugo was there and was basically asked to leave, or he had to leave. Louis Napoleon Bonaparte was elected president, but in late 1851, in December 1851, he sieged a coup d'etat and took over as basically dictator. And that's basic. That is when this series starts. But in 1852, he crowns himself. Well, I guess you would say, well, he becomes emperor, and that's this the beginning of the Second Empire. Now, we started the series with that coup d'état, and we find out from the second book, well, in the first one and the second one, Eugene Rougon is in Paris, and he was instrumental in helping this happen, the coup d'état to happen. And and that's his story is the second book, The Fortunes of the Rougon, or the second book. Sorry, I'm now blanking on the correct. No, The Fortunes of the Rougon is the first one. The His Excellency Eugene Rougon is the second one. Now, they are descended from Adelaide, who there's two parts of the family. There's the Rougons and the Macquarts. She had an affair after that created sort of the Macquart line, and then the Rougon line, which is the legitimate part of the family. And they came from a small provincial town. They were, and so he's like the real, like, third generation here. The second generation Eugene is, but he's got several brothers as well who show up in the kill. But also, too, at this time around 1852, there was a huge urban renewal, I guess you would say, of Paris that Louis Napoleon wanted to do. And he basically, because of all the small streets, he wanted to get rid of that kind of narrow avenues where there could be barricades put up. So it was to be like having long avenues put through, just cutting through the city, complete devastation and rebuild. And a civil engineer called Houseman was hired to do this. And it's been considered, at least in the introduction, it says it's the biggest urban renewal project in history. And this is still history as well. This is real history that was happening. And it wasn't until 1929 that that debt was paid off. So it took that long. But it ended, basically, as far as I can tell, with the siege of Paris in 1872. So it was a 20-year period that it was going on. Now, this is the background of what's happening there for this one, because we've got another Rougon, Eugene's brother, Aristide. I can never pronounce these names correctly, so I do apologize. Um, Aristide or Aristide, Aristide. But he changes his name and he has another name, Saccard. And he's more, I would say, money grubbing and chasing the money more than his siblings. He becomes a speculator, a land speculator, and buying and selling and borrowing money, leveraging everything in order to get money. When he first appears in Paris, he is not that rich. He's kind of poor, with a wife and a child, but he goes to see his brother Eugene, and Eugene just gets him a sort of a everyday type job, but he uses it and he gets information. So he works his way up for this. But his first wife dies, and he marries a very young, very beautiful young woman with a big dowry. That's what he's interested in, is the dowry. And it basically goes through his greed and lust for money, and then his wife's, Renee's, greed and lust for perversions, I guess you would say, clothing and happiness. Now, and there's lots of things that are like, there's parallel things that are going along there with their two lives, but they both have perversions in many ways. But there's a few bits I'm going to read, because this will sort of give you the tone of the book without me saying too much. There's a really good part where Zola is describing the smell of the flowers and everything. You can just sort of picture it and smell it. But he ends it here, but he says, but amid this strange music of odors, the dominant melody that constantly returned, stifling the sweetness of the vanilla and the orchid's pungency, was the penetrating, sensual smell of flesh, the smell of lovemaking escaping in the early morning from the bedroom of newlyweds. And I will read you one other part that talks about her and then I'll contrast that. Like there is spoilers here a little bit, but and Aristide's son comes back home from school. He's 13 at the beginning of when Renee, his new wife, meets him. And then it goes for about 10 years. So there's about a 10-year period that the book covers. So he gets older, and at this point he's about 20, I guess, no, in his late teens, I think maybe 19. And that means Renee, the stepmother, and I just blanked on his name. Maxime is her stepson's name, and the they means them. They had drifted towards incest since the day when Maxime, in his threadbare schoolboy tunic, had hung on Renee's neck, creasing her guardsman's coat. From that time onwards, there had been a slow, inexorable perversion of their relationship. The strange education the young woman gave the child, the familiarity that made them friends later on, the laughter and the audacity of the shared secrets, all this dangerous promiscuity had ended by binding them together in such a way that the pleasure of friendship approached carnal indulgence. They had given themselves to each other for years. The animal act was simply the culmination of this unconscious malady of passion. In the maddened world in which they lived, their sin had sprouted as on a dunghill oozing with strange juices. It had developed with strange refinements and special conditions of perversion. Yeah, 1872. It just goes to show there's nothing new under the sun. Now, so she's got this kind of perversion and for things, and her husband Aristide, the boy's father, has his perversion for money and after money and everything, how he can use people for money, how he can use his wife for money, all sorts of things like that. And you know, and it goes back to Zola's sort of naturalism, where hereditary and environment is a large factor in the creation of a person. So you've got the Rougon's matriarch, who is the grandfather of Aristide, who was lusting after another man, a smuggler, which created the Macquart line. Even though Renee, the stepmother, Aristide's wife, is not part of that line, but she had a strange upbringing too. This is a period of, even though there's dictatorship and censorship, it was a very open period and decadence in Parisian society. Throughout here, they're going to balls, and there is nudity for women, and it just seems a natural thing, or happening all the time. And but definitely Maxime is the descendant of this, so that's through this. So where Aristide has the perversion of everything for money rather than sexual perversion, that other side of it is shown through his son and his second wife. And also too, there is very strange gender roles that are in here. There's scenes where, while they're talking about where Renee becomes, in the relationship, the man, and her stepson becomes the woman. And he is quite effeminate in many ways, and that is not looked at as normal at the time. And Zola, I don't think, is showing that as any normality. That's another strange thing or perversion of society. Now, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying this is how it is in the world. This is how Zola is presenting things. And there is at least one occasion where she dresses him up as a woman and takes him to a ball. And he seems to like women's clothing, and yeah, it's a very strange book. But it's all this stuff with this, you know, corruption that was happening at the time. Like, you know, there was like, you know, probably eventually almost 500,000 Parisians, poor Parisians, were evicted and moved outside of the city, because Louis Napoleon didn't want, because they're the cause of upset in society. They're the ones that are going to have another revolution. So you get rid of these people, and it was just corruption run rife. And that's where Aristide, with his land speculation and money speculation, is showing all that perversion. And out of that, this is the society that French society has grown because of the decadence of the Second Empire. I that's what I get from Zola's writing in many ways. So that all this, like the society and the hereditary part with it, we haven't yet got to the the uh, um, the Macquart side yet. And the next book was written in 1891 or 92. Oh, it's still about Aristide. It's still about Aristide. Um, so and probably his son Maxine. It's a longer book. It's about 100 pages longer than The Kill. It is. Yeah. I was surprised to see this in a book. I had not read this one before. I'm not sure what else Zola can pull out of this series, because I haven't read them all. So this is interesting for me to go through this, and it's very sensational, but there is a lot more that it's not just a sensational layer. There is a lot of stuff, because those things mean something. Those things, these sensational bits, these perversion bits, are there to illustrate something in society, and to illustrate his naturalism belief of heredity and an environment. What I'm not arguing to say that that's correct, but that's what he is portraying here, and it's not just the sensational bits, but it now explains all these covers that I used to see in from 1950s and 60s, where these very, very risque covers of Zola, that sort of now explains things. If you do a Google search for Emile Zola, vintage paperbacks, you'll see what I mean. There is a plethora of them. They're really cool, but it explains it, because you could say Zola was a dirty bugger. But no, I'm really enjoying this, and I'm really looking forward to reading more and getting through the whole series eventually. So anyway, so I do apologize for the content of this, but that's what the book is. Well, no, I don't apologize, because that's the way the book is. It is sensational on a level, but there's more depth to it, and there's more reality, I guess, to this too, because you wouldn't get British fiction that really dealt with this. If I can't think of anything. I'm sure there might be something that hinted at these things, but the French didn't hint at times. It's right out there in front. So bring it on, Zola. I have to see what else there will be. Thank you, BookTube.